Lever News has a great piece on how the rail safety bill, which came out of the accident in Palestine, Ohio, which was co-sponsored by J.D. Vance and I think Sherrod Brown. Also, there was another Democratic politician, I can't remember who it was, that had written this with J.D. Vance. Well, the Republicans have basically destroyed the ability of that to advance. It is not a bill.
Milking it for weeks and weeks for political gain.
There is not, Democrats do not have the ability to pass a bill on their own that is not done under a reconciliation process. And the only things that can be done under reconciliation are more budgetary and dealing with the revenue of the United States government or the expense of the United States government. The railway safety bill would have required more people working on a train, updating cars and technology on a more regular basis, et cetera, et cetera. Republicans quashed that. So we don't have that rail safety bill. Well, we'll see how that works out. In the meantime, the Department of Labor today is restoring some rules around the Davis-Bacon Act. That is an act which sets wage floors for construction workers on public works projects. Now, this is really, it's relevant just broadly speaking, but it's particularly relevant in the wake of the IRA and the infrastructure bill, because there's been a real boom in manufacturing and in constructing manufacturing plants. There's also been a big boom in infrastructure building, not just like solar and whatnot, but like roads and bridges, et cetera, et cetera. And the long and short of it is that Davis-Bacon, the way that it used to be prior to really like the Reagan era, but it was sort of, the ground was softened up under Carter. Carter was not terribly helpful for the unions. There was a big turn against the unions in the Democratic Party at that time, largely because Democratic primaries there were no primaries.
Yeah.
The way that that nominees were chosen was literally backroom deals with union leaders.
At least the unions were there.
And the unions were there, exactly. As opposed to Republicans who didn't it was just like three guys. But in the early 70s, under McGovern, the primaries were sort of taken out of that apparatus and given to a sort of a different apparatus. Nixon had more union support, not the least which a bit was a function of like the unions and union workers cleaving from like the hippies and the emancipation movements. Nevertheless, the Biden Department of Labor proposed Davis-Bacon rule includes changes to enforcement, anti-retaliation provisions, and tools to hold contractors responsible for wage violations. It would explicitly include certain green job classifications under Davis-Bacon, including solar and wind, and it would change the department's reliance on survey data to set prevailing wages, in which case is decades old. In other words, it's going to update what prevailing wages are. If you work on a project that has any government funding under Davis-Bacon, you need to provide a prevailing wage. And how the prevailing wage, okay, I could say prevailing wage. What does that mean? Mm-hmm. We can define it in a number of ways. We can do it as an average. So if construction workers make $50 an hour on 3 projects, but they're smaller projects, and then they make $15 an hour on a bigger project, the average is going to be brought way down. And that's the way that, particularly if you're working in the South, where you don't have as many union jobs, that's how prevailing wages were kept low there.
And wage theft in the construction industry, pretty prominent.
Extremely prominent. Of course, we were told the other day that wage theft is not really a crime.
It's mainly like government contractors or something.
More or less. So the department plans to reverse an 83 reform by President Ronald Reagan that disadvantaged union wage rates and made wage determinations correspond less and less to actual pay. Prior to the 1980s, a wage rate was considered prevailing if it was paid to at least 30% of workers in an area. The standard benefited workers who were paid collectively bargained rates, and it prevented contractors from undercutting the local workforce. In other words, unions would raise the wages. If no single rate was paid more to 30% of workers, the prevailing wage was determined by taking the weighted average of pay. In 82, the Reagan Department of Labor eliminated the 30% rule and replaced it with a majority requirement. 50% plus one worker must be making a wage for it to count as prevailing. So that way, in the absence of that, it became an average. And the Biden Department of Labor argues that using averages can drag down wages by allowing a single low-wage contractor to depress the wage rates on federal contracts below the higher rate.
That's why, like, averages, for example, on their face are usually less reliable indicators than, say, median.
Yes.
So, I mean, that's
classic case of Bill Gates comes in here.
Outliers
we are all millionaires. The average person in here is a millionaire.
Yeah.
I mean, a billionaire if he comes in. But the reality is a little bit different than that. So this is an important move. It'll, of course, be, challenged in the courts, and who knows? We've got the Fifth Circuit just basically said that Biden's Department of Education cannot relieve debt for students who were lied to by universities in terms of like what the outcomes of them getting a degree would be. Now, this was standard fare during the Obama administration, and it has been heretofore considered uncontroversial. But again, we have a federal judiciary that is packed now with Trump appointees. 2 of the 3 on that panel were Trump appointees. The third was Bush. And it could go up to the Supreme Court. It probably will. Or they may not even take the case. It is impossible to understate the importance of a sympathetic federal judiciary when you are talking about material benefits for people in society that, I mean, I don't even know if structural benefits could take place, frankly, with the judiciary that we have. But when you're talking about a country that is so polarized, you're basically handcuffing the ability to provide any type of relief to people. The $360 billion in Biden's new student relief program, and we're going to see that challenge. The challenges have already more or less begun. The income-driven repayment plans, as kludgy as it is, and hoopy and all this stuff, the actual dollar amounts for people could be incredibly significant. You're going to get a lot of people who are going to have their debt wiped away. You're going to get a lot of people who are going to be paying considerably less on their debt. But regardless of whether, I would prefer to see let's just wipe it all out, frankly.
Well, yeah.
But the authority is to do so is really what the question is going to be. And I think these courts are just hell-bent on saying you can't do it.